You're listening to DeepRest. Take a deep breath, slow down, and let sleep carry you. I'm David, and tonight I'll guide you into the world of dreams.
The first snowfall of the season fell upon Winterpine with the kind of delicate beauty that made the entire town look as if it had stepped straight out of a storybook. Each flake drifting slowly through the still air before settling on rooftops glittering with Christmas lights, sidewalks lined with evergreen garlands, and the massive spruce tree in the main square that volunteers had spent the entire week decorating with red ribbons, silver tinsel, and glowing golden stars. The sky was a soft, muted gray, the type that promised more snow to come, and as church bells chimed lightly in the distance, a hush settled over the town, that magical quiet that always arrived before the holidays and made the whole world feel softer, kinder, and somehow full of possibility. And into this picture-perfect moment came Evelyn Harper, boots crunching through the snow, as she hurried down Maple Street with a stack of wrapped gift boxes balanced precariously in her arms, a bright red scarf fluttering behind her as if she were racing the wind itself. She had returned home to Winterpine after 5 long years in the city, and though she told everyone it was just for the holidays, the truth was that she wasn't sure of anything anymore. 2 weeks earlier, she had lost her job at a major marketing firm, the kind of job she once thought defined her, and despite all her effort to hide the disappointment from her family, the weight of that failure clung to her like a shadow she couldn't quite shake off. Winterpine looked exactly the same as she remembered: snow-dusted cottages, warm lights glowing in every window, children rolling giant snowballs in front yards, while parents strung up more lights, and the scent of cinnamon, pine, and wood smoke drifting through the crisp winter air. But Evelyn felt different, older somehow, as if life had pulled her too far from her roots and she wasn't quite sure how to plant herself again. As she adjusted the stack of boxes, she glanced toward Harper's Hearth, the family bakery that had been in the Harpers' hands for 3 generations, the windows glowing with soft amber light and the wooden sign swinging gently above the door, dusted with fresh snow like powdered sugar. She hadn't stepped through those doors in over a year, and the sight of it stirred something deep in her chest, nostalgia mixed with longing, the kind of ache she never let herself feel in the city. She climbed the front steps carefully, but just as her foot reached the last one, she slipped on a thin patch of black ice hidden beneath the snow, her eyes widening in panic as the stack of boxes wobbled, and for a moment she braced for the inevitable crash, but strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her before she fell, and the boxes she had dropped were caught mid-tumble by the same pair of hands, moving with surprising speed. She let out a breath of relief and looked up, expecting to thank some kind stranger, but instead she found herself staring into the warm hazel eyes of Lucas Hale, her childhood best friend, first crush, and the boy who once promised they'd run Winterpine together someday, back when dreams were simple and life hadn't yet pulled them in different directions. Lucas looked older, his jaw more defined, his shoulders broader, his once unruly hair now neatly trimmed, yet his smile was the same, soft on the left side and teasing on the right, a smile that made her heart stumble in a way she hadn't prepared for. "Easy there, Evie," he said, in that warm, familiar voice that wrapped around her like a blanket on a cold night. "Winterpine sidewalks are still out to get you." And hearing him use her old nickname, the one only he had ever used, sent a strange mix of warmth and nerves through her, and she forced a laugh, even as her pulse quickened, trying not to show that his presence alone had cracked open feelings she thought she had buried years ago. He handed her the boxes one by one, brushing snow off their tops, and she noticed the faint scent of pine on his coat, as if he had just come from the Christmas tree farm on the outskirts of town. "You okay?" he asked, his eyes lingering on hers with a softness that felt almost dangerous, the kind of softness that made old memories stir, memories of late-night cocoa, walking home from school in the snow, and that one winter night in 7th grade when they had accidentally kissed under the mistletoe at the town festival, a memory she had replayed more times than she ever admitted. She nodded quickly, trying to hide the heat rising to her cheeks, and said, "Yeah, I'm fine, just slippery," though her voice betrayed her flustered state, and Lucas chuckled, his breath forming white puffs in the cold air, before he tucked his hands into his coat pockets and rocked back on his heels, studying her as if trying to memorize every detail of her face. "Didn't think I'd see you back here," he said softly, "especially before Christmas." And Evelyn shrugged, her gaze darting away as she said, "Yeah, well, thought it was time," leaving out the part about losing her job, the part about feeling lost, the part about needing Winterpine more than she had realized. Just then, the bakery's door swung open, and her mother, Margaret Harper, stepped outside wearing a flour-dusted apron, her smile warm enough to melt every snowflake in town. "Evie," she exclaimed, pulling her daughter into a tight hug that smelled of vanilla and nutmeg, and Evelyn sank into it, feeling the familiar comfort wash over her like hot chocolate on a cold night. Inside, the bakery was alive with holiday cheer, gingerbread men cooling on racks, peppermint bark wrapped in festive bags, snowflake-shaped cookies glistening with blue icing, and a large gingerbread house on display for the annual Christmas Eve contest. And the warmth from the ovens made her forget the biting cold outside. Lucas followed them in, shaking snow from his coat like he'd done 100 times in her childhood, and her younger brother, Jamie, who now towered over her at nearly 6 feet tall, burst from the kitchen, flour in his hair and excitement in his eyes, as he shouted, "Evie, you're home," before lifting her into a bear hug. Everything felt familiar yet different, and Evelyn found herself smiling, truly smiling, for the first time in weeks. The bakery was buzzing with customers, all chatting about the upcoming winter festival, the tree lighting ceremony, and the annual holiday parade. And as Evelyn stepped behind the counter to help, without even thinking, Lucas leaned against the warm brick wall by the window, watching her with that same unshakable softness, as if simply being near her grounded him in a way he hadn't expected. Eventually, when the bakery quieted down for the afternoon lull, Lucas asked if she wanted to take a walk through town, just like they used to, and though she hesitated, knowing that spending time with him meant stirring up emotions she wasn't sure she wanted to face, she found herself saying yes. They strolled through Winterpine's charming streets, past kids building snowmen and couples sipping hot cider from paper cups, past wreaths hanging on every door and icicle lights twinkling like stars. And as they reached the town square, workers were finishing the decorations on the massive Christmas tree, its branches heavy with ornaments that sparkled under the rising glow of the lamp posts. Lucas stopped beside her and breathed in the cold evening air before saying quietly, "I always hoped you'd come back for Christmas." And Evelyn felt her heartbeat stutter again, as though the town, the snow, and the memories were pulling her in directions she wasn't ready for. And when she didn't answer, Lucas didn't push. He simply walked beside her, matching her pace, his presence steady and familiar. And as the first festival lights flickered on, bathing the entire square in warm golden glow, Evelyn realized that Winterpine had begun working its quiet magic on her the moment she arrived. She didn't know what the rest of the holiday season would bring, didn't know how long she would stay, or whether returning home would help her find clarity or simply complicate things further. But as snowflakes drifted gently around them, and Lucas's hand brushed lightly against hers, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. The soft, hopeful spark of possibility, the kind that only Christmas could ignite. The next morning arrived with a soft glow spreading over Winterpine, the kind of quiet dawn where the world feels suspended between dreams and reality, the snow outside untouched and sparkling like crystals scattered across the earth, and Evelyn awoke to the warm scent of cinnamon drifting through her childhood bedroom, her heart unexpectedly light as she stretched beneath the quilt her grandmother had sewn decades earlier. For a moment, she simply lay there, listening to the faint hum of holiday music playing downstairs and distant laughter coming from the bakery preparing for the festival crowds. And she wondered when she had last felt this peaceful, this connected to something real, something she didn't have to force or pretend to fit into. After dressing in a cozy sweater and boots lined with faux fur, she stepped out into the hall, pausing to glance at the framed childhood photos, herself and Jamie in ugly Christmas sweaters, Lucas making goofy faces behind them in almost every shot, the three of them inseparable back then, and she felt a tug in her chest that she didn't quite know how to name. Downstairs, her mother greeted her with a warm smile and a mug of hot cocoa topped with marshmallows, saying, "Big day ahead, sweetheart. The festival prep crew is already downstairs at the bakery, and I know they'd love your help." And though Evelyn hadn't planned on getting involved, she found herself nodding eagerly, craving the sense of purpose, the feeling of being part of something again. When she stepped outside, the cold burst of air kissed her cheeks, and snowflakes landed softly on her eyelashes, delicate and fleeting, and Winterpine was buzzing with life. Wooden booths being set up for the festival, strings of lights being secured across the streets, and the scent of roasted chestnuts drifting through the air from a vendor warming his cart near the square. Lucas arrived moments later, his breath forming little clouds as he jogged toward her, bundled in a thick winter coat, a knitted beanie covering his ears, and that familiar grin tugging at his mouth as he said, "Morning, Evie, ready to save Winterpine from a holiday disaster?" To which she laughed, rolling her eyes, knowing exactly what he meant. Every year, the town's Christmas tree topper, a glowing glass star, had a bad habit of short-circuiting at the worst possible moment. And Lucas, being the unofficial fixer of everything electrical in town, usually spent the week climbing ladders in the freezing cold to keep it lit. They worked side by side, hanging wreaths on lamp posts, wrapping garlands around the wooden railing of the gazebo, and fixing a few stubborn lights that refused to cooperate. And though they moved quickly, talking easily between tasks, there was an underlying warmth between them, something unspoken but unmistakably present, growing stronger with every sideways glance, every shared laugh, every moment their hands brushed. Children ran past them with snowballs, giggling as parents set up outdoor heaters and hung signs for the upcoming cookie competition, and the entire town seemed alive with anticipation, the holiday spirit practically humming through the air. Around noon, they took a break, sitting together on a bench overlooking the frozen lake, sipping hot cider from steaming cups Lucas had bought from a vendor, and Evelyn felt the calmness settle over her again, like Winterpine was stitching her back together without her even noticing. Lucas glanced at her, his expression softer than she remembered, and said, almost shyly, "It's really good having you back, Evie." His voice low, vulnerable in a way that caught her off guard, and she swallowed hard before answering, "It's good to be back. I think I needed this more than I realized." Though she left out the part about feeling lost in the city, the part about waking up every day unsure of who she was becoming. As they watched snowflakes fall over the frozen lake, Lucas asked gently, "Is everything okay? I mean, really okay?" And Evelyn hesitated, feeling the truth swelling in her chest, wanting to spill out but held back by the fear of sounding weak or broken. And she said instead, "I have just been overwhelmed, needed a break from everything." And Lucas nodded slowly, not pushing, just understanding in that quiet way he always had, the way that made her want to lean on him even when she wasn't sure she should. After finishing their cider, they headed to the bakery, where Jamie was decorating gingerbread houses and Margaret was organizing trays of snowflake-shaped cookies, and Evelyn joined in, piping icing along the sides of gingerbread walls while Lucas tested Christmas lights for the storefront display. Customers poured in and out, greeting Evelyn with cheerful surprise, asking her how long she was staying, if she'd returned for good, and every time she smiled and said she wasn't sure, but inside she felt the question digging deeper, as if the answer was slowly forming even if she didn't want to admit it. In the afternoon, the town held the annual Warm Wishes and Wishes Warmer event, where locals wrote anonymous holiday wishes on red paper tags and tied them to the Tree of Light, a massive evergreen placed in the center of the square, and Lucas convinced Evelyn to join him despite her initial reluctance. She wrote her wish, simple, uncertain, heartfelt, and tied it to a branch among hundreds of others fluttering in the cold wind. And when Lucas stepped forward to hang his, she noticed him hesitating for a moment, his eyes lingering on the tag, as if debating whether to write what he truly felt. But he tied it to the branch before she could catch a glimpse of the words. As the sun began to set, painting the snow in shades of gold and rose, Lucas invited her to the annual Hale family Christmas bonfire at the lake, a tradition she used to attend every year before she moved away. And though part of her feared getting too close, getting too comfortable, she found herself saying yes once again. The bonfire was warm and bright, surrounded by families roasting marshmallows, singing carols and laughing together, and Evelyn felt a pang of nostalgia, so strong it almost ached. Lucas stayed close to her side, brushing snow from her hat, handing her a warm blanket, offering her freshly roasted marshmallows, and every small gesture felt heavier than it should, heavier in a way that made something inside her shift. At one point, Jamie joined them, nudging Evelyn playfully and whispering, "So you and Lucas, huh?" To which she shoved him lightly, denying everything even as her cheeks flushed with warmth. Later, as the crowd thinned and the stars emerged in a sky clear and bright over the frozen lake, Lucas and Evelyn found themselves walking alone along the snowy path back toward town, their breath visible in the cold, their footsteps soft against the fresh powder, and the silence between them felt charged rather than empty. Lucas finally broke it, his voice quiet but steady as he said, "Evie, I know things didn't end the way either of us wanted when you left, but I've never stopped caring about you." And the honesty in his words hit her like a sudden gust of cold air, sharp and undeniable, making her stop mid-step. She turned toward him, heart racing, trying to form a response, but the moment hung suspended between them, fragile and glowing like a snow-lit lantern. Before she could speak, a sudden burst of fireworks exploded over the lake, practice for the Christmas Eve show, painting the sky with brilliant reds, greens, and silvers, and Lucas stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him despite the cold. For a heartbeat, she thought he might kiss her, the moment pulsing with possibility, but instead he reached up gently and brushed a snowflake from her cheek, his touch light as a whisper, and said softly, "I just wanted you to know," before turning toward the lights of town, giving her the space to follow or walk away. Evelyn stood there for a long moment, fireworks reflecting in her eyes, her breath trembling in the freezing air, and she felt the world tipping, shifting beneath her feet, as if Winterpine was changing her in ways she hadn't expected and maybe didn't want to resist. When she finally caught up to Lucas, their arms brushed lightly, and neither pulled away, walking together in a silence that said more than words ever could, the snow falling softly around them as Winterpine glowed warmly through the night, holding its breath for whatever the season would bring next. The train rattled steadily through the whitening countryside, its rhythmic churning echoing like a heartbeat against the frosty December night, and Clara sat pressed against the window of her compartment, watching as flakes of snow danced in swirling spirals past the glass, illuminated briefly by the golden lamps mounted along the tracks, each flicker making the world look like an old film reel, replaying some forgotten winter memory. Beside her, Elias hunched slightly over the blue flame shimmering from the enchanted lantern, shielding it with his hands as though it were a fragile creature that needed constant protection. And Clara could not decide whether the light was beautiful or terrifying, for it pulsed with a slow, deliberate rhythm that seemed almost alive. The train car was quiet, save for the distant murmuring of passengers settling into sleep, the occasional clink of teacups from the dining carriage, and the constant murmur of wind coaxing whispers into the scenes of the windows. Yet despite the calm, Clara's pulse throbbed with restless urgency, the memory of the woman in the snow globe haunting her thoughts like a melody she could not stop humming. Elias glanced up at her, eyes soft and shadowed. "We're partway there," he murmured, lifting the lantern slightly. "The light knows the path better than I do. It never forgets where it's been." Clara raised an eyebrow at that, but said nothing. She had learned that questioning the mechanics of the lantern only led to more confusing answers that sounded like riddles wrapped in tradition, wrapped in impossible magic. The train lurched around a bend, and Clara gripped the windowsill to steady herself as outside, the forests grew denser and darker, their branches heavy with snow that clung in thick blankets like cotton draped over the world. Here and there, faint glimmers of lights flickered in the distance, lonely farmhouses, small villages tucked beneath sleeping hills, but the lights were far apart, fading rapidly as the winter line carried them deeper into a region that did not appear on most maps. "Where exactly is the northern gate?" Clara finally asked, breaking the silence. Elias shifted his weight, expression tightening. "Past the hollow pines, beyond the ridge of echoes, where the midnight veil hangs low. You'll know it when you see it." "That means nothing to me," Clara snapped gently, but he only offered a faint smile, the kind that acknowledged her frustration while refusing to soothe it. A gust of wind struck the side of the carriage with enough force to rattle the luggage racks overhead, and Clara leaned back, breath clouding faintly in the chilled air. It was getting colder, much colder. "Is it supposed to be freezing inside?" she muttered, rubbing her arms. Elias didn't answer. He was focused on the lantern, brow furrowed, the blue flame flickering unevenly. "It's responding," he whispered. "The gate is close." The train conductor announced something unintelligible through the crackling speakers, and the lights overhead flickered twice before dimming to a softer amber glow. The rest of the passengers didn't stir, as though lulled into an enchanted sleep, leaving Clara and Elias somehow feeling isolated within a bubble of suspended time. Clara leaned closer to him. "Tell me the truth," she said quietly. "What happens at the northern gate? What exactly are we walking into?" Elias exhaled a slow breath, the lantern light reflecting in his irises like tiny stars trapped beneath ice. "A crossing," he said. "A test. A choice. For me? For both of us." She swallowed hard, feeling that same electric tingle she'd felt the first night at the snow globe. Except now it wasn't distant or subtle. It pulsed beneath her ribs like a second heartbeat. Without warning, the train screeched sharply, metal grinding against metal, and Clara slammed forward in her seat, catching herself at the last second. Passengers jerked awake from their enchanted dozing, murmuring in confusion. But as the train rolled to a gradual stop, Clara felt an inexplicable heaviness settle over her, like the air itself was thickening. The conductor's voice echoed again, this time clearer. "Next stop, Hollow Pines. 10 minutes." Elias shot up, lantern in hand. "We get off there." Clara blinked. "But you just said the gate is near," he said curtly, "and getting nearer." They stepped into the aisle, grabbing their bags, pushing past drowsy travelers who barely noticed them, and as they walked toward the exit, Clara felt a pressure building behind her ears, a distant hum woven into the wind outside. The train door opened with a hiss, and Clara stepped into a wall of cold so sharp it stole her breath. Hollow Pines looked nothing like she expected. Instead of a quaint village or rustic station, the platform opened into a forest clearing where towering pine trees, black silhouettes against the white world, reached their frost-laden branches toward the sky like skeletal arms. The snow beneath her boots felt deeper, heavier, as though the forest were blanketed in centuries of silence. "No station?" Clara asked. Elias shook his head. "The winter line only stops here for those carrying the lantern. For everyone else." He gestured to the train, where passengers blinked slowly, staring dazedly at windows without actually seeing the outside at all. "They won't remember this stop when they wake." The doors closed behind them, and the train pulled away, vanishing slowly into the whirling snow until its lights became faint gleams swallowed by the white night. The forest was eerily still. No wind, no rustling branches, only the soft sound of falling snow like sand drifting through an hourglass. Elias lifted the lantern. "Stay close. If you fall behind, the forest will swallow your tracks." Clara didn't doubt him. They trudged forward, their footprints sinking deep into untouched snow as the trees loomed higher around them. Pale blue light from the lantern danced across the trunks, revealing carvings, old symbols etched deep into the bark. "What are these?" Clara whispered. Elias brushed his fingers across one of the runes. "Warnings," he murmured. "Boundaries. Reminders of what sleeps in these woods." Clara's breath hitched. "What sleeps?" "Not now," he interrupted. "We need to focus." They journeyed deeper, the pine scent growing sharper, almost metallic. The silence pressed around them like a thick blanket, broken only by the crunch of their boots and the soft hum of the lantern, which was now glowing brighter than before, its flames swirling in serpentine motions. After what felt like an hour of walking, they reached a small clearing where the trees bowed inward, branches forming an archway of frost-coated needles. The air shimmered faintly. Clara felt the hair rise on her arms. "Is this it?" she whispered. Elias stared at the archway, lantern trembling slightly in his grasp. "The entrance to the rise of echoes. Once we pass through, nothing will sound the same." "Meaning?" "Your thoughts, your fears, your memories, they will echo until the forest decides you're allowed to leave." Clara stepped back instinctively. "That sounds horrifying." "It can be," Elias admitted, "but it can also reveal truths you've buried." Their eyes met, the lantern's blue glow illuminating Elias's face in soft waves. "Are you ready?" he asked. Clara wasn't, not even close, but she nodded anyway. The instant they stepped beneath the archway, the world shifted, sound warped. The crunch of snow under Clara's boots echoed oddly, repeating several seconds after the initial sound like a delayed drum beat. Her breathing echoed too, soft, growing, multiplying, until the forest seemed filled with a chorus of versions of herself. Elias's voice echoed when he spoke, but not in a natural way. Every word lingered like a ripple moving through water. "Don't panic," he said, his voice bouncing unnaturally between the trees. Clara's voice echoed back in whispers she had not spoken. "Don't panic, don't panic, panic." She clenched her fists. "I hate this place," she muttered. Her voice echoed in hundreds of phantom murmurs. "Hate this place, hate." "Ignore it," Elias said. "Just walk." They continued, but the deeper they ventured into the rise of echoes, the stronger the distortions grew. At one point, Clara heard her mother's voice, soft, warm, calling her name. She froze. "Mom?" she whispered. Elias grabbed her wrist. "Not her. It's the forest." Another voice followed, Max's laughter, swirling around her like a warm breeze. Clara's chest tightened painfully. "Is it trying to manipulate me?" "It's trying to measure you," Elias replied. "The forest tests everyone differently." Clara swallowed, pushing forward despite the ache in her chest. The voices multiplied, whispering old worries, forgotten regrets, buried fears. "You always run away. You weren't strong enough. You'll fail like before." She stumbled, pressing her hands against her ears, even though it did nothing to muffle the echoes. Elias steadied her. "I know it's hard, but if you want answers, you have to face this." Clara blinked away tears. "Why me? Why was I chosen?" Elias hesitated. "Because the snow chose, and it chose you first." When they finally emerged from the rise of echoes, Clara felt as though she had aged years in minutes. The air beyond the archway was clearer, colder, lighter. She inhaled deeply, letting it fill her lungs with relief. Elias watched her quietly. "You did better than most," he said. She wanted to feel proud, but exhaustion clung to her like frost. "How much farther?" Elias lifted the lantern, and the blue flame stretched upward in a thin column of light. "We're nearing the midnight veil. Beyond it lies the gate." Clara squared her shoulders. "Then let's finish this." The midnight veil appeared not as a barrier, but as a curtain of humoring darkness hanging between two massive pine trees. The air around it crackled faintly, like static. Snowflakes that drifted too close evaporated instantly, turning into tiny sparks of silver. Clara reached out, but Elias caught her hand. "Only with the lantern," he warned. "Without it, the veil erases whatever passes through." "Erases," Clara repeated, her voice cracking, as in, "gone." She stared at the swirling darkness, her throat burning with fear. "Why does every part of this journey sound increasingly horrifying?" Elias smiled faintly. "Because we're getting closer to truth. Truth isn't gentle." He stepped forward, raising the lantern. The blue flame flared, spreading into a fan of light that parted the darkness just enough to reveal a narrow passage. "Stay with me," he said. Clara nodded and followed. Inside the veil, the world dissolved into streaks of color and light, swirling in vortex patterns Clara couldn't fully comprehend. It felt like walking through a dream, each step weightless and uncertain. Shadows flickered in her peripheral vision, shapes she couldn't name. At one point, she glimpsed a version of herself walking a few feet ahead, then it vanished as soon as she blinked. The lantern flickered wildly, and Elias tightened his grip on it. "The gate is close, keep moving." Clara clung to his voice, refusing to let fear consume her. Then, as abruptly as they had entered the veil, they were out, and the sight before them stole Clara's breath entirely. A vast frozen lake stretched beneath a black sky, shimmering with ribbons of green and blue auroras. At the center of the lake stood an enormous stone arch, carved with runes that glowed faintly like embers beneath ash. Snow spiraled gently around it, though no wind blew. "The northern gate," Elias said reverently. Clara approached slowly, her boots crunching over crystalline frost that looked too perfect to be real. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "And dangerous," Elias added. "The gate doesn't open for just anyone. It judges, it chooses." Clara turned to him, heart racing. "What if it doesn't choose me?" Elias's expression softened. "It already has." He stepped beside her, raising the lantern. The blue flame elongated, stretching toward the arch like a thread pulled by invisible hands. The runes brightened, the air hummed, snow swirled upward in spiraling columns. Clara felt her pulse pounding, so loudly it drowned out everything else. The gate pulsed once, twice, and then burst into radiant blue light that spilled across the lake in shimmering waves. Clara gasped. Elias whispered, "Touch the arch. It's waiting." Her hand trembled as she reached toward the glowing runes, and the moment her fingertips touched the stone, a shockwave of warmth flooded her body, visions exploding behind her eyes, Winterberry glowing beneath moonlit snow, the woman with the lantern holding out her hand, the silver bell ringing softly in the dark, and a whispered voice saying, "Come find me, child of winter." Clara staggered back, chest heaving. What was that? Elias steadied her. A message and an invitation. The gate's glow intensified, opening into a swirling portal of blue and white light. Clara stared, awe mixing with terror. Are we really going in there? Elias nodded. Yes, because on the other side lies the truth about the snow, about the bell, about why Winterberry called you. Clara swallowed hard, gripping the strap of her bag, feeling the weight of everything that had led her here. She stepped forward. The light brightened, the air warmed around her like a silent welcome. Let's finish what we started. And together, they stepped through the gate. The sensation of crossing the northern gate felt like plunging through warm starlight, soft, shimmering, strangely comforting. Yet when Clara and Elias emerged on the other side, the air around them had transformed into a stillness so profound that even the sound of their breaths felt too loud, and Clara blinked rapidly as her eyes adjusted to a landscape unlike anything she had ever seen. A vast expanse of silver snow stretching endlessly under a sky of deep midnight blue, streaked with auroras that rippled like celestial ribbons. Giant crystalline structures rose from the ground like frozen cathedrals, their surfaces glowing faintly with internal light, and drifting among them were tiny star-shaped snowflakes that floated slowly downward as if suspended in time itself. The air carried a warmth that contradicted the snow beneath her boots, a magical equilibrium that made the world feel impossibly serene. Clara's heart pounded as she held tightly onto the strap of her bag, glancing at Elias, who had gone unusually still, his gaze fixed on a figure standing at the far end of the crystalline plain, a silhouette wrapped in glowing silver light, its form slowly sharpening into something familiar, something haunting. Clara's breath caught. "It's her," she whispered. Elias nodded, voice low. "The Lantern Keeper." As they approached, the glowing woman's features came into focus. Warm brown eyes, a soft, gentle face, long silver hair flowing like melting moonlight, and wrapped around her shoulders a cloak shimmering with thousands of tiny bells that chimed with each soft movement of the air. Her presence radiated not power but peace, the kind that calmed the very center of a person's soul. "Clara," the woman said, her voice melodic and filled with warmth, as though she were speaking directly to Clara's heart rather than her ears. "You crossed the veil. You followed the lantern, and still your spirit remains unbroken." Clara tried to speak but found her throat tight, overwhelmed by a wave of emotions she couldn't articulate, so she simply nodded, clutching her gloves tightly. The woman smiled gently and extended her hand. "Come, child of winter, there is much to understand." Elias bowed his head slightly, stepping back as though giving the two of them space. The woman led Clara across the silver field toward a crystalline hill, and with each step, the snow glowed brighter, responding to Clara's presence in soft, luminescent pulses, like ripples of moonlight following her footsteps. Clara felt strangely connected to this place, as though she had known it long before she had ever seen it. "Why me?" Clara finally asked, her voice trembling. "Why did the snow choose me?" The Lantern Keeper stopped at the crest of the hill, her cloak of bells chiming softly, and she gestured to the horizon, where swirling silver clouds parted to reveal a breathtaking sight. A colossal tree, its branches stretching so high they disappeared into the auroras, its trunk carved with ancient runes glowing like embers, and surrounding it, a ring of lights that shimmered like floating stars. "This," the keeper said softly, "is the heart of winter. It is the source of every snowfall, every frost-touched breeze, every winter miracle that blesses your world." Clara stared, stunned. "It's alive?" The keeper nodded. "Yes, and it listens. It calls to the hearts capable of hearing its song. This year, that heart was yours." Clara swallowed hard, overwhelmed. "But What about the snow globe and the bell? Why did Winterberry change? Why was I shown all of this? The keeper's gaze softened, because winter was fading. Clara's eyes widened. Fading? The keeper nodded again, sadness clouding her expression. The magic that carries the spirit of winter, the joy, the stillness, the reflection, the warmth shared between people, began to weaken. Fewer hearts remembered what winter was for. Fewer souls listened. The heart of winter dimmed. Clara felt a pang in her chest. And I could fix that? You could remind the world. You could awaken what had been forgotten. Clara opened her mouth to argue. She was just one person, one girl from one small town. But the words didn't come out, because the keeper stepped closer and placed her hand gently against Clara's cheek. A rush of warmth surged through Clara, and suddenly her vision blurred as memories she had buried long ago rose to the surface. Her father lifting her up to place a star on their tree, her mother baking gingerbread cookies shaped like snowflakes, her brother laughing as they made snow angels on the front lawn, the glow of yellow lights against frosted windows, and the feeling, the pure, unfiltered feeling of believing that winter could fix anything. Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. I forgot what it felt like. The keeper smiled. And now you remember. That is enough to rekindle the path. Elias finally approached, the lantern casting blue light across the snow. The heart of winter needs a keeper, he said, voice low. Clara turned sharply. Me? You want me to stay here? The keeper shook her head gently. No, Clara. The heart does not need you to stay. It needs you to carry its light back to your world. She gestured to the lantern Elias held. The flame chose you. It awakened for you. And you must return it to where winter is truly celebrated, among the people. Clara wiped her tears. But how do I carry something so big? I'm just one person. The keeper touched the lantern, and the blue flame flared into brilliant white light before settling again. You will not carry winter alone. You will remind others, and they will remember, and the world will warm itself with the cold once more. Clara exhaled shakily, realizing, perhaps for the first time, how heavy the responsibility truly was. So, what do I do now? She asked quietly. The keeper smiled, bells chiming softly. You return home, Clara, and when the first snow falls, you listen. The rest will come. The ground beneath them shimmered, snow swirling upward into a gentle cyclone of silver light. Clara felt her body lift slightly, warmth enveloping her like a soft blanket. Elias squeezed her shoulder. You'll do great, he said. Clara managed a small, trembling smile. Will I see you again? Elias smirked faintly. Winter has a way of bringing people together. I wouldn't bet against it. The keeper lifted her hand, and the snowstorm brightened until Clara was forced to shut her eyes. The ground disappeared beneath her feet. The air rushed past her like a sigh of the heavens. And then, silence. When Clara opened her eyes, she was standing in the center of Winterbury's town square. Soft snow falling gently around her, the warm glow of lanterns reflecting off the frosted rooftops. Children laughed nearby, couples strolled past sipping hot cocoa, and the giant pine tree in the center of the square glowed with thousands of golden lights. In her hand, Clara still held the lantern, its flame now softly white, pulsing gently like a steady heartbeat. The town looked brighter somehow, warmer, more alive than she remembered. As she stood there dazed, a soft voice behind her said, "Clara." She turned to see Max, his cheeks red from the cold, eyes wide. "I've been looking everywhere for you. Are you okay?" Clara smiled, genuine warmth blooming inside her. "I'm more than okay," she said softly. I think everything's going to be okay." Max frowned slightly, but smiled back. "Well, come on, the tree lighting ceremony starts in 5 minutes." He extended his hand. Clara took it. The moment she did, the first chime rang through the air, a gentle melodic bell tone that echoed across the square like a whisper of magic. Children gasped. Adults paused mid-conversation. The snow thickened gently, swirling in soft spirals as though dancing. Clara looked down at the lantern, and the flame glowed brighter. She smiled. Winter was alive again. The heart of winter had awakened. And as the bells rang, and the lights sparkled, and the first true snowfall of the season blanketed Winterbury in silver sleek, Clara understood. The magic of winter wasn't in the snow, or the lights, or the rituals. It was in the people who believed in it. It was in hope made visible. And she had become its keeper. Not the keeper of winter's power, but of its memory. The snow remembered her, because she remembered it. And winter, at last, was home.